Hi, yes, it's nice to see you again too. So listen, today we're going to be looking at how to introduce yourself in the IELTS speaking part 1, including how to give your name and how to talk about your home or your hometown, work or studies. And of course, we'll be looking at lots of language and some tips and tricks to make sure this is a success for you. Let's go. First of all, please do remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel, IELTS Speaking Success, and do turn on the notifications, and then that's going to make sure you don't miss out on any of the exciting videos coming your way soon. So my name is Keith. I run the IELTS Speaking Success website and YouTube channel and Facebook page. Very nice to meet you. And if I know you, good to see you again. So listen, let's begin with part 1. What happens exactly in IELTS speaking part 1? Well, you arrive at the test centre, of course. You go in, you register. Normally, and some test centres and countries are a little bit different, but normally you are asked to leave your belongings, your mobile phone in a special place, and then you're taken to a waiting area and you would sit outside the exam room. Okay. You wait there, and then the examiner will come and open the door and invite you in. They'll say hello, of course. Just say hello, smile. And normally, before you go in, they will start recording the test. And they use a little MP3 player, so don't be surprised. Your whole test is recorded. You're invited to sit down, and then the test begins. Of course, you need your ID or the passport, and the examiner will start to ask you questions, and we're going to look at that. Do remember, the examiner is the one who asks you questions. You're not asking them questions. It's not a conversation. It is an interview, right? And also, the examiner sometimes has a pen and makes notes. Sometimes, right? It has nothing to do with you. Sometimes because they have a clock and they write down the timing so that they follow the timing. So they may write an 8 and a 12. And of course, sometimes candidates look over, ooh, 8. It's not your score. It's nothing to do with you, right? Now, if you look over, you might see, ooh, chicken. Yeah, because maybe the examiner's just written down what they want for dinner. It could be anything. The important thing is don't pay attention. Focus. Okay, so let's look at a few tips and tricks at the start of the test. Number 1, get there early. Don't be late, because that's just going to give you stress on top of the stress you may already have, right? So get there a little bit early. If you can, on your phone, have something to listen to in English to get you in the mood and to give you an English environment before the test, right? So you're just kind of psyched up and ready for the test. Then when you're in the testing centre, if you can, on your seat or go to the toilet, get mentally prepared, right? Just take a few moments to think about what's about to happen. Okay, and so the few minutes before the exam, one of the biggest challenges is that most candidates get nervous, and it starts to go into a cycle of being nervous and negative. So you need to break that. So when you're nervous, just say, that's fine. I'm nervous. That's okay. And just let the nerves be. See what happens. It's actually good to have a few butterflies in the stomach before the test. And then get focused and be positive. Think, my English is good. That's the level I have. I love my English. I'm going to do my best. And we will see what happens. And just stay there. Stay in that positive mind for a few seconds or minutes before the test. And then just before you nip into the testing room, smile and go in when the examiner invites you in. Okay, just getting mentally prepared really, really helps. Okay, and then after you've sat down The examiner checks your ID, your passport or your national identity card, and then will say, okay, what's your name? And just say your name. And then they will probably say, and what can I call you? Okay, keep it simple. You can call me Tom. You can call me Keith. Okay, so what's your name? Keith Michael O'Hare. And what can I call you? Just call me Keith. Just call me Keith. Keep it really simple. Okay. And then next, the examiner is going to move on to ask you a couple of questions on one topic, either your home, your hometown, work, or studies. And after that, you'll have 2 more part 1 topics. So let's look at what they might ask you. First of all, if they talk or ask you about your hometown. In the very first question about hometown or home or work, it is true that this is really a warm-up, right? It is time for you to warm up, and it's time for the examiner to get used to your voice and to you. So they don't really evaluate it, and it is very short. So you don't want to worry too much about fancy vocabulary and showing off, right? My advice, keep it short and simple, right? Keep it short and sweet. For each question, just give 2 to 3 sentences. Very, very brief. Now, it is a warm-up, but first impressions count. And so if in your first 2 sentences you're making grammar mistakes, right? It's like having tomato sauce on your shirt. It's like, oh, hello. Oh, right. The first impression straight away is, what a mess, right? So your first few sentences, if possible, keep them so short and simple that they're accurate and there are no mistakes. If you try to make them complex, the chances are you may make more mistakes and you'll have pasta sauce on your shirt. So keep it simple, short and sweet, 2 to 3 sentences. I don't think the introduction is the time to show off. Maybe later when you're warming up, especially in part 2 and part 3, you want to be showing off your vocabulary and your language, right? But think of it like this. Imagine you went to a party, right? And you met somebody and straight away they say, hi, I'm Michael. Yes, I live in London, one of the great cosmopolitan metropolises of Britain, and it's a beautiful place. I work for Google, one of the greatest multinational companies in the world. I've got a PhD in astrophysics. Oh, you're going to be like, sorry, John. You'd be shooting off to the bar like an arrow. I mean, that is not the way to make a good first impression, right? You want to keep it simple and friendly, right? Hi, my name's Keith. Yes, I'm from Manchester. I work in Google. That's it. Maybe later, when you've got to know each other, you can tell a bit more, but keep it simple, right? Okay? So, no tomato sauce, no PhD. Let's move on. So now the examiner begins the first question. Let's talk about your hometown. Tell me about the town where you live. So the first thing to notice is what I call signposts. So the examiner normally gives you a little signpost to say, this is what I'm going to talk about, right? Let's talk about your hometown. Listen out for the signpost. Okay. Or let's talk about your home. Home. Got it. Now, this question sometimes confuses people because if you listen carefully, they say, let's talk about your hometown. Tell me about the town where you live. And some people go, what, do you want to know about my hometown or the town where I live? Because they're not the same. What do? Do I talk about Manchester or Santander where I'm living? And panic sets in. So remember, the examiner doesn't actually care about your hometown. You can talk about any town, but just talk about one. right? Either your hometown or where you live. If it's not the same place, it doesn't matter. So don't sweat the small stuff. Just go straight in. Talk about your hometown, right? So you could say something like, I live in Santander. I've been living there for 2 years, actually. And yeah, it's a coastal city with some nice beaches. That's it, right? Now, this is actually a bit of a trick. But I say, I live in blah, blah, blah. I've been living there for 2 years, 4, 5 years. I've been living there is really nice, complex grammar, right? Now, I said don't show off, but if you know this tense and you can say it naturally, I've been living there. Remember the I've been living there for 2 years. Great. That's nice. It's still simple, right? Right? It's a coastal city and it has some beaches. Okay. It's a big city with lots of industry. It's a small village with lots of parks. Something like that, nice and simple. And then the next question will come in, and there is a variety of questions, but let's take one. For example, what's the most interesting part of that city? Here, again, keep it simple. Just talk about one interesting part or maybe two and say why it's interesting. And if you want a simple template to begin, the most interesting part for me is probably the beaches. The most interesting part for me is probably the shops. Yeah, it's a nice, simple template if you want, especially at the beginning of the test. If you want to have a simple template to use, that could be it, right? You might say, the most interesting part for me is probably the beaches. There are quite a few beaches that attract quite a lot of tourists, and I like to go down there sometimes to have a swim or a paddle or just to have a stroll on the sand. Okay. Now, another tip and a trick. When students are preparing for IELTS speaking, I know that they often write down their answer, what they want to say. And so this is okay, but there's a problem, right? Because most of the time when you write down what you think is a good answer, you're writing written English, not spoken English. And so it might look something like this. There are several beaches that attract many tourists. I like to go to these beaches most weekends for a swim or a paddle. Sometimes I just go for a stroll on the sand. Okay. Now, also, that's okay, but the problem as well is that a lot of students then try to make it more complicated and they start crafting and creating a better answer. And it starts to become something like this. There are several beautiful beaches that attract a myriad of tourists. I like to go to these scenic spots most weekends for a swim or a paddle. Sometimes I just go for a stroll on the soft golden sand, and you start to sound like a poet. It becomes so written that it's not natural, and that bad impression, that pasta on your shirt has just got worse because it doesn't sound natural and it sounds like you've memorized a written answer. So how do you avoid this? Very simply, when you see the question you want to practice answering, speak out your answer, right? Speak out a natural answer, record it, and then if you want, write down what you've recorded. Make small changes, but keep it spoken, right? And also a good tip is if you do write out what you've said, don't write sentences, write it in chunks. So it looks like this. Can you see there are different phrases, one after the other? There are several beaches that attract a lot of tourists, and I like to go to one of them. You're kind of chunking the clauses usually. It makes it easier and more natural to speak like this. So that's a great tip to, if you're going to write your answer, write it like that. So can you see it's much more natural? It's not overcomplicated. And that is really the best way to prepare. Don't create and write down your answer. Speak it out, record it. And then if you want, write out what you've said. Keep it natural, keep it spoken. Sounds like a great slogan, right? Keep it natural, keep it spoken. But it's true. Let's move on. And then the next question that sometimes comes up is quite difficult, right? Is what kind of jobs do people do there? What a difficult question. What kind of jobs do people do there? Well, there's everything. There's postmen, there's bankers, there's butchers, there's bakers, there's businessmen. I don't know, Mr. Examiner. Right? But what the examiner's looking at here is maybe in your town there's a special industry that is particularly strong, so you can talk about it. If not, that's fine, right? You just give a more general answer. So you may say something like, well, a variety of jobs, I think. There are a lot of fishermen, actually, because fishing is a major source of income for that city. A number of people also work in the tourism sector. Short and simple. Right, so we've looked at some of the questions for hometown. Let's look now at home, sometimes accommodation. So here there's the signpost might be, let's talk about your home. Let's talk about your accommodation. That's the signpost, right? And then the question, do you live in a house or a flat? Or sometimes the question is, what kind of accommodation do you live in? Examiners nod their head a lot, right, to help you understand. So here you may say something like, well, I live in a flat, in a high-rise building. It's in the suburbs of the city. It's not too big, not too small, but it's nice and cozy. So here you'll probably want to learn some of the language around houses, detached house, a townhouse, a bungalow, a flat, an apartment, high-rise building. You may talk about the location. It's in the suburbs, it's in the city centre, or it's downtown, or it's slap bang right in the city centre. It's in the outskirts, okay? And then talking about the size, it's huge, it's small. You couldn't swing a cat in there if it's so small. Not too big, not too small. Most houses will be that normal size, right? Nothing special. It's nothing to write home about. It's a nice expression. If something's not special, it's nothing to write home about. Not too big, not too small, but it is nice and cozy. Nice binomial, right? Short and sweet, nice and cozy. Fish and chips. These are very common, two words with and or un together. It's nice and cozy. Now, talking about your home, another common question is, who do you live with? Well, it's none of your business, actually. It's a bit of a personal question, right? I mean, maybe you're living in secret with your boyfriend or girlfriend. Who knows? But remember, the examiner doesn't really care who you live with, right? It's just about language. So maybe you live with your close family, your spouse and children, maybe with your parents, or maybe you live on your own, or possibly you're sharing a house with classmates, schoolmates, university mates, who knows? Now, in the same way, do you remember we talked about your job, right? I work in the Santander Bank and I've been working there for 5 years. We can do the same here if you feel comfortable with it. So maybe you say, I live with my wife. We've been together for 5 years. And with my daughter, who is 2. For example, I live with my parents. I've always lived with them, actually. Or I live on my own. I've been living on my own since I left home. Or I share a house actually with some mates from university, and we've been living together and sharing the house for about a year and a half now. Okay. And if you've got a pet, talk about your pet. And we have a dog and a cat who lives with us too. Great. Now, the next common question about homes is about often decoration. So they may ask, how is your home decorated? Or what is your favourite room? A very quick trick. If it helps you, you can repeat the question, right? How is my home decorated? Let me see. Well, my home is decorated with, What's my favourite room? Just a moment. Well, my favourite room is my bedroom. That is absolutely fine. If it helps you gain time to think, do it. This is not like IELTS writing, where you have to paraphrase and use synonyms. It's not like that. You can just be natural. We often repeat the question, right, in your natural language and your mother tongue. So you can do the same here. Talking about decoration, we can talk about furniture, photos and paintings, adornments, things like that, right? So you may say, well, for example, you can talk about plants. Yep, maybe you've got, oh, hello, this way. Maybe you've got a bookshelf. Maybe you've got some kind of adornment like my little guitar, right? All of that. I'll tell you what, that plant, it's looking a bit the worse for wear, right? Hang on. That should cheer it up. Apparently, they say if you talk to plants, they grow. Oi, come on, grow. Maybe not like that. So you can talk about decoration, maybe something like this. Well, my favourite room, I would say, is my bedroom. And in my bedroom, I've got a simple table and chair from IKEA, actually. And I've got two paintings hanging on the wall. One is a portrait and one is a landscape. Yeah, nice, simple, but some good language. Let's move on. Finally, another question you are often asked about your home is, do you like living there? You want to say briefly yes or no, and remember to say why. So maybe something like, yes, I do. I really like it actually because it's cozy. It's spacious and cozy. There are plenty of shops and restaurants nearby, and it's well connected. Let's move on to talk about what you do. So you'll hear the following. Let's talk about what you do. Do you work or are you a student? Again, keep it short and sweet. Just say which one you do, maybe what your job is and where you do it, right? Do you work or are you a student? I'm a student actually, and I'm studying English at the University of da-da-da. I work. I work in a bank and I'm a bank teller. Or I work in a school. I'm a teacher. I'm an English teacher. Then very often they ask, what do you do every day? Now, it can be tempting to give a list of lots of things. Well, I wake up, I prepare my classes, I give the classes, I have to make exams, I mark the exams, give a list. No, don't give a list. It's a bit better, maybe just say 2, maybe 3 things, but just a little bit of detail, right? Just a little bit. It just sounds more natural rather than a shopping list, right? So what do you do every day? Well, I teach, right? I give classes online. So I have to prepare my classes and I usually do a bit of research for that. On top of that, I also have to write reports for my students. Right, just 2 or 3 things with small details. Next question. What would you like to change about your job? Now here, it's not would you like to change your job? It's what would you like to change about your job? What are the activities in your job you don't like and you would change if you could, right? So here you may say something like, well, I'm not a big fan of if I could, I would change that. It'd be great to something like that. So for example, in my case, well, I'm not a big fan of writing reports actually. So if I could, I would change that. It'd be good to outsource that to somebody else actually. But all in all, I enjoy my job. All in all just means overall, by and large, right? So it's a nice way just to summarize what you're saying here, right? I would change this, but overall, all in all, I enjoy my job. Next, remember there are many different kinds of questions you may get, but one of them could be, can you describe your work environment? Your work environment is not so much the cars in the street outside your building. It's more about the room, the furniture, the facilities, the people, and the atmosphere you have at work, right? So you could describe your working place. I work in an office. It's an open plan office. I work from home. Actually, I do. There are about 20 of us in the office. There are 20 other people there. It's just me on my own. The facilities are pretty good. You could say, talking about the facilities, we have air conditioning, we've got a canteen, there's a gym or a creche where we can leave the children. Furniture, you may mention, we've got simple tables, comfy seats, ergonomic chairs, maybe, if you're lucky. And the atmosphere, well, it's about how you get on with people, right? Is it a tense atmosphere where everybody's on edge, or is it relaxed? Is it a relaxed atmosphere where everybody's quite chilled out and laid back? There's a good atmosphere where I work. Everybody gets on pretty well together. Brilliant. Let's move on now. Look at studying. So if you don't work, probably you study. Some people I know work and study at the same time, and they're not sure which one to choose. It doesn't really matter, right? Remember again, the examiner doesn't care. So long as you are able to talk about stuff, that's what matters. So if you're a student and you say, I study, they may ask you, well, what do you study? If you've already said what you study, the examiner will probably skip that question and go to the next one. Or not. Sometimes they just repeat the question to test you, right? So you've said, I study biology in Oxford University. And then the examiner says, and what do you study? And you go, biology, I just told you. Are you paying attention? Right? No, of course you don't say that. What the examiner's testing is, as in a normal conversation, can you say, well, as I mentioned before, I'm studying biology and it's really interesting. So you're repeating but paraphrasing a little bit in a polite, acceptable way. As I just mentioned, I'm studying biology. Yep. Don't insult your examiner. It's not a good idea. Right. And then they may skip or move on. Often they ask you, not always, but often, why did you choose that subject? Now here, maybe you chose it, so say why. Maybe your parents chose it. You can explain that, okay? You may want to say something like, to tell you the truth, my parents chose it for me. To be honest, my parents chose it for me. Or, well, I chose it because I've always been interested in biology. I've always enjoyed biology. I've always wanted to be a scientist, right? Nice use of the present perfect. I've always wanted to be a scientist or biologist. I was inspired by blah, 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 the famous biologist. And ever since then, I've always wanted to be a biologist. Something like that. You may want to add, I think it will be really useful for my future career. Again, keep it simple, but explain why. Make sure you give a bit of detail on your reason. Moving on. Another common question. Do you like it? Sometimes you do, right? Sometimes you regret studying or choosing that subject and you wish you had done something else. I can see an opportunity, right? Do you like it? Not really. I've realized now that it's not my cup of tea. I wish I had chosen a different subject, actually. Lovely, right? I have realized it's not my cup of tea. I wish I had chosen, right? Something that is not true, but you wish it were. I wish I had chosen another subject. Brilliant. Or, absolutely, I love it. I particularly like where we do experiments on the animals. Maybe, I don't know, because we get to learn about the anatomy of the different animals. So you can explain the part that you like and why. Or you explain the part that you don't like and why. I do like studying biology, actually, yes, very much, but I'm not really fond of the experiments we do on animals because I get a bit squeezy and I'd rather not experiment on animals. Don't be a biologist, my friend. Anyway, so we can talk about, yes, the things you like or the things you don't like. Keep it fairly short and sweet. You know, it's 2 to 3 sentences for each question. Great. There you have it. So we've talked about hometown, home, study or work. First impressions are important. You don't want spaghetti on your shirt and you don't want to be the PhD show-off at the party. You want to make a good first impression. That's it. Just to remind you, there are a lot more videos on YouTube to help you in different parts of the test. But if you want a really deep experience to learn the language and techniques at a much deeper level, I do have an online course. It's on Udemy. It's called IELTS Speaking Success. Get a Band 7 Plus, which will help you improve all aspects of your English, spoken English, to help you get a Band 7 or above. Check it out. If it's right for you, go for it. I've enjoyed making the video today. I hope it can help you. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye. Do you live in a house? I particularly like report writing. No, that's a job. Now, if you've just said you live with your wife, you better say yes. No. So here, we've got simple desks. We've got what? Can I just add, just to remind you, what am I going to remind you?